Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to today's Friday Reflections on this, the 4th of September 2020. I hope everybody is well and enjoying your day. Today, I would like to read from this book by Sheikh Ibn Arabi. This is one of his main books, and it's a really amazing book full of wisdom and deep teachings. So I'm actually going to read from a chapter called The Wisdom of Spirit in the Word of Jacob. This is chapter 8 of the book. The book is in English known as the Bezels of Wisdom. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Religion is of two kinds: the religion of God, and those to whom God has taught his religion, and those whom they have taught, and second, the religion of creation. He says, Abraham enjoined it upon his sons, as did Jacob upon his son, saying, O my son, God has chosen for you the religion, so die not save as submitting yourselves to him, which means following him. Religion in this verse has the definite article, namely it is known and established religion. He says the religion with God is Islam, i.e. submission, which means following and obeying him, God. Religion meaning you're yielding to and submitting to God. That which comes from God is the dispensation to which you submit yourself, which is religion. The Holy Writ being the dispensation God has established. He who is marked by his submission to what God has laid down is the one who practices the religion and maintains its practice, who establishes its practice as he keeps up the prayers. It is the servant who establishes the practice of religion, and God who determines its nature for your submission is your action, and God who determines its nature for your submission is your action, and the religion is from your act, since your being may be only through that which derives from you yourself. Thus, just as your act establishes your blessedness, so also does his, God's, acts establish your divine names, which acts are you being originated relative, so only in relative to his effects is he called a divinity, and only in relation to your effects are you called blessed. Thus does God equate your position in this respect with his, when you maintain the practice of religion and submit to what he has established. If God wills, we will elaborate on this point after we have explained religion as it is with creation, of which God takes due account. All religion is for God, from you, not him, except as being your origin. He, Most High, says monasticism. He, Most High, says monasticism was introduced by them for the first time, which incorporates the revelations of wisdom that were not brought by the apostle, as generally known in bringing the message to the people from God in the customary fashion, since the wisdom and good apparent in it are in harmony with the divine determination, respecting the purpose of revealed scripture. It is in God's sight that which he laid down in his dispensation, although he did not prescribe it for them. Thus, since God has unknown to them opened the door of his providence and mercy to their hearts. He causes them to extol what they have established, apart from the more familiar way brought by the Prophet ﷺ and recognized by divine revelation, seeking by it the pleasure of God. He says they do not observe it, that is, those who established it and for whom it was established, as it should be observed, except to seek God's pleasure. Thus they believe we brought those who believed in their reward, but many of them, that is, among whom the way is practiced, are astray. That is, they have departed from submission to it and its proper practice. As for those who have departed from the way, God will not be well disposed towards them. Now, this, I realize, is quite academic. I mean, this is Ibn Arabi after all. So what I will do is I'll try to break down what I've read so far in ways which are a little bit easier to understand. So firstly, Ibn Arabi says religion is of two kinds. You have the religion as it is revealed to the messengers of Allah, and you have, and also those who are very closely following them. And then you have the religion that is from the creation, i.e. human beings get together and create religion. This may be based upon previous revelations, or it may be from more creative. But either way, it still is from Allah, because only Allah exists. But there's like a direct route and an indirect route. The best way, if you really want to be blessed by Allah, is to follow the direct route and follow the guidelines as given to the messengers of God. And it says here, Ibn Arabi says that God does acknowledge the religion of the creation. So as well as the revealed religion which God has given to us through the prophets of Allah, God acknowledges the religion that is not through this direct route. So in this is the implication that it will depend on these people's intention and what they practice. So there's no clear answer on this, but obviously Allah knows what everybody does, and Allah will make a decision on that when people stand before Allah on the Day of Judgment. And this is because even though in the created religion things have been introduced like monasticism, which are not in the revealed religion, they're not necessary. But at the same time, if you look at monks in various religions that have monks, like in Christianity and Buddhism and Hinduism, monks are often good people. Or nuns, in the female monks. They're often good people and they do good things. So Ibn Arabi is saying that if they are good people and they're doing good things, then Allah will reward them for whatever they have done. And Allah acknowledges all the good that they do. But at the same time, it is mentioned in the Quran that there is deviance among the created religion. And some of them are astray. So obviously people will be rewarded according to what good they do. And Allah will make a decision on all of this. And it will be obviously on an individual basis, because everybody is different. I mean, even if you look at the practices of Muslims, you've got people who claim to be Muslims, who are very spiritual people, very dedicated to Allah, who do lots of charity, who care a lot about people. And you have people calling themselves Muslims who are very rigid and narrow-minded, and in the process of practicing their religion end up doing a lot of harm. But of course many of them are sincere. So what will Allah decide about each of these souls on the Day of Judgment? The decision remains with Allah. We cannot say for sure, but obviously Allah is just and Allah is fair. So I will continue. A divine command, it says here, however, a command divine requires obedience. So a divine command requires obedience. The one commanded either obeys willingly or opposes the command. As for the former, no more will be said. As for the latter, the opposition by which he is governed demands of God one of two courses, either indulgence and forgiveness or censure. One of them must take place according as he requires it, i.e. deserves it in himself. For the reality, i.e. God, always acts in accordance with the servant as regards his acts and state. Thus it is the essential state that effects the decision. This goes back to what I was commenting on before. It depends on the individual, what their intention is towards God, and how this is based upon what they understand. So God's not going to do anything unjust to anybody because of the religion that they come from or their background or their heritage. Allah understands all of this way better than any of us. In this way, religion may be regarded as a matter of requital and recompense for what pleases and what does not please. Concerning recompense for the former, he, that is God, says God is pleased with them and they with him. And concerning recompense for the latter, whosoever of you oppresses, we will cause him to experience a severe punishment. His saying, we overlook their evil deeds, is also a recompense. Thus religion is a form of recompense for the religion of Islam, which means submission, so that one submits to what pleases and to what does not please, which involves recompense. This is then the outer aspect of the subject. So here we're talking about the exoteric religion. Not the esoteric religion, the exoteric religion, the outward form of religion that people see. You go to a church or a mosque and you have religious rituals and people might dress a certain way. This is the outward form of religion, but it is not discussing the internal realities. For instance, you could have a person who is always praying in a church or a mosque, but although they're praying, then internally they might be thinking about something else. And conversely, you could have someone who doesn't look particularly religious, but they're always mindful of Allah. They're always with Allah in their thoughts. Now, their internal reality is actually quite pious, but they might not look it. Whereas the other person, who is always in the church or the mosque, but they're thinking about something else. I'm not talking about people who are in the church or the mosque who are thinking about Allah, but they're in the church or the mosque and their mind is elsewhere. Then what are they really? It doesn't matter how they dress or what they're doing or how many prayers they read, because they're even praying. Now, of course, no one knows that except Allah. So, we can't judge people. You can't judge people when it comes to their spiritual reality. Only Allah can do that. And it doesn't matter what label they go under. It doesn't matter what church or mosque or religious building they go to, because you don't know their internal reality. So then further, Ibn Arabi goes on to the internal reality now. As for the inner and secret aspect, it is a divine self-revelation in the mirror of the existence of reality. Reality is capitalized here, i.e. that means God, because God is the reality. For the contingent beings receive from the reality only as they themselves in their essential states dictate. They have a form for every state, the forms varying according to the variation of their states, as the self-revelation of the reality differs according to the state. Thus the servant is affected in accordance with what he is in himself. Thus also only he bestows good on himself, and only he evil, being his own benefactor and chastiser. Therefore let him not blame anyone but himself, nor praise any but himself. Now this is a point that a lot of people don't get, and Ibn Arabi will continue, so I will continue reading, because Ibn Arabi actually explains this further in the next paragraph. God's is the conclusive argument through his knowledge of them, since knowledge is dependent on that which is known. A deeper truth in this matter is that the contingent beings are, in the final analysis, non-existent, since the only true existence is the existence of the reality in the forms of the states in which the contingent beings are in themselves and in their eternally latent essences. So you should know that there is none other than the reality, who undergoes pleasure and pain, and that it is a divine self-revelation that is the result of every state, which is called consequence and penalty. This comes to the crux of something that is one of the beliefs of Ibn Arabi that sometimes causes, sometimes it's regarded as quite controversial, because it is hard to get our heads around it. We are here now. I'm talking to you. I feel myself. Am I not real? And you would probably think the same. But all of us were created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Each of our existences is 100% dependent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And not just at the moment of creation, but all through our lives. We live in this universe. We are part of the universe. We are fully dependent upon the universe. Even if you described it in sort of scientific and less religious terms, everything in our bodies, the atoms and molecules that make up our bodies, they came from the stars. They were created in stars. And those stars exploded, they went supernova, and this was spread around space and eventually condensed into form planets. And we are made of that stuff, whatever fell down, condensed into what became the Earth. And all the molecules in our bodies were created in stars. Scientifically, even science understands this, that we're all part of the universe as they explain it. But of course, from a faith perspective, we understand that the universe is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So while the scientists say that we're all part of the universe, well, the universe is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and cannot exist without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like we cannot exist without the universe. We can't even exist without this earth, never mind the universe. If something happened to this earth tomorrow, we'd be floating in space, we'd bang, that's we're finished. We have no power over our own existence. We have, within our lives as we live them on this earth, we have the ability to make choices, we have the ability to live our lives according to those choices. So we have a degree of free will. But at the same time, we do not have an independent existence from even from this earth. And the earth is part of the universe, and the universe is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This also comes from Ibn Arabi's understanding of La ilaha illallah. But from Ibn Arabi's perspective, it means that there is nothing except Allah. Not just nothing worthy of worship, there literally is nothing except Allah. So Allah creates the forms, Allah fills those forms, and ultimately it's like veils. But the reality is that each of our souls is all the time connected to, and in a sense like a fractal part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no separate existence. But at the same time, just like maybe an easier way to explain now is like people play video games, and also in the film The Matrix, all of the characters and stuff within the video game are running around. All of those characters seem to have a separate existence, but they're actually part of the video game. The computer is powering all of their artificial intelligences that are moving them. So, Salam alaikum Rami. So, although they may appear within the video game to be separate and doing separate things and independent things, and of course as computer technology improves, what they're able to do within this virtual world will increase. But the reality is that none of those characters in that video game have a separate existence. They are all fully dependent on the video game and fully dependent on the computer within which they are running. In a similar way, that's true of all of us human beings, all of the life on this planet, all of the life in the universe, all of the things in the universe. We're in some way within Allah and existing within Allah. And of course, it's not surprising it's difficult to get our heads around that, because how can we fully comprehend that when we are the creation of Allah? We are within that. I mean, let's say, just like these video games, you had a very clever simulation and a virtual world that was created inside a powerful supercomputer, and to the point that those characters actually within that supercomputer actually thought they were living independent lives. They're actually just characters living lives within a supercomputer. All of what they're doing is powered by algorithms inside the computer. But to them, in that virtual world, it becomes like our lives here, like real life. They don't know anything else. They don't know any of the world. How can they understand that they're all inside a supercomputer? It's food for thought. The Matrix film kind of brought this out as well. But it's interesting. I mean, Ibn Arabi was saying this long before there was a Matrix film, or before we had computers that could simulate these things. So you should know that there is none other than the reality, that is God, who undergoes pleasure and pain, and it is this divine self-revelation that is the result of every state, which is called consequence and penalty. The same applies as a result of good or evil, except that convention caused the result in the case of good, caused the reward in the case of good, and punishment in the case of evil. In this sense, the religion might be called or interpreted as a custom, adab, since there befalls the servant only that which his own state demands and necessitates. The poet says, as was your custom, dinika, with al-Hawawith before her, that is to say your custom. The meaning of a custom is that something should revert to its original state. Although custom, in the sense of repetition, is not appropriate to what we are concerned with. However, custom is an intelligible reality, and a certain resemblance exists between the forms. For example, we know that Zayd was the same as Amma in respect to their humanity, although in this instance humanity does not occur twice, for if so, it would be a multiple thing, and it is a single reality, not a multiplicity. We also know that Zayd is not the same as Amma in respect to their individuality. Thus Zayd is as Zayd. Thus Zayd as Zayd is not Amma as Amma, because they're individual identities. On the surface, Zayd would appear to be a replica of Amma, but a true assessment shows this is not to be true, there being from one standpoint no repetition, while from another there is a certain repetition. In the same way, we may speak of recompense in one sense and deny it in another, since recompense is itself one of the states of contingent being. This is a question kept unexplained by those who know it as is proper, not because they are ignorant of it, but because it is an aspect of the mystery of pre-measurement which governs created being. Now, know that just as it may be said that the doctor is the servant of nature, so might it also be said that the apostles and heirs are the servants of the divine command in general, and at the same time serving the states of contingent beings. Their service is one of their own states, that they are in their eternal essences. Consider what a wonderful thing this is. It must be understood, however, that servant in this case limits his service to that which accords with the rules governing what he serves, with respect to state or speech. The doctor may be called a servant of nature only if he works in cooperation with her. Nature has established in the body of a patient a particular complex of conditions by which he is called sick. Were the doctor to assist her in that particular manifestation, he would serve only to increase the sickness. Thus he restrains her only in order to restore health to his patient. However, health is also from nature, which condition may be had by the setting up of another complex of conditions opposed to the existing one. Thus the doctor is not fully the servant of nature, being her servant only in the sense that he would be quite unable to cure the sick man and change his condition except by the means of nature. He serves her in a particular way, but not in a general way, which does not apply in this kind of question. So you see, in nature, sickness is natural as well. So if the doctor is a servant of nature, but if the doctor just allowed sickness to run its course, which would be natural, then the patient would get further more ill and would die. But on the other hand, the doctor still serves nature because health is also from nature. Health is not something separate from nature. But the doctor is choosing how he's going to serve nature instead of just letting nature run its course, which would also be serving nature. And this is what Ibn Arabi means. That's the general course. If you let nature run its course, that's serving nature in a general sense. But the doctor serves nature in a particular sense, not in a general sense. And Ibn Arabi is using the analogy of a doctor because everybody knows about doctors and everybody has to visit doctors. Not everybody meets a prophet or a saint. So Ibn Arabi is saying that the apostles and their heirs are like the doctor who is at once both the servant and not the servant of nature, as regards their serving the reality. The reality manifests two aspects in determining the states of those who receive the divine command. The effect of the command on the servant is as the will of the reality determines, which is itself determined by his knowledge, which is determined in turn by that which is the object of his knowledge bestows of itself, which is not the manifest except in its image. His knowledge here being God's knowledge. And the will of the reality is the will of God. Thus the apostle and the heir are servants of the divine command through the will being the divine will, but not the servants of the will opposing it, the will with it the command, in order to secure the blessedness of the one charged to obey it. Were he the servant of the will, he would not seek to advise, or would advise only in accordance with it. The apostle, as also the heir, is a doctor of souls, completely obedient to the command of God. Considering both the command of God and his will, it may be seen that what is commanded may be contrary to his will, since only what he wills takes place, which is the reason for the command. If he wills what he commands, it takes place, and if he does not will what he commands, it does not. This is called ordinarily opposition and disobedience, sin. So here it must be understood that what we get from the prophets generally is the Sharia, the jurisprudence, the religious rules and guidelines which ordinarily are to be followed by the general population. But the will of God isn't necessarily always what the Sharia or jurisprudence is demanding, even if that Sharia or jurisprudence is completely pure and free from error and reflecting the commands of God as revealed in the Torah and in the Quran. Because God does what he wills. And whatever happens, because only God exists, whatever happens in this creation, whatever happens, that must be the will of God. Because if it was not the will of God, it would not happen. No matter what it is. Otherwise, that betrays a lack of faith on our part, that we think that God could stop what he willed. And if you really believe God is God, and God created the heavens and the earth, then God can do anything. So whatever happens must be the will of God. But of course, we only know that from hindsight, from what is after it happens. We know it must be the will of God because it happened, it took place. Allah allowed it. Whereas, Examples of this, I mean, you look at the Second World War. Second World War was horrible. Most appalling loss of human life and cruelty, and so many sins and crimes took place. But it happened. So it must have been the will of Allah to at least permit it to happen. But obviously, what took place during the Second World War in so many ways goes against what Allah commands. The guidance that Allah gave us through the messengers of God as to how we should live our lives and how we should conduct ourselves. This is the deeper side of Islam. But this, make no mistake, this is from the Quran as well. This is an understanding, but he's taken it to another level. The apostle, the messenger, is merely the transmitter of the command. For this reason, he, the prophet, Salam, said, "The chapter Hud and its kind caused me great anxiety, because of their oft-repeated saying, 'Be upright as you have been commanded.' This caused him anxiety, namely the words, 'as you have been commanded,' for he did not know whether the command was in accord with the will, and thus to be, or whether it conflicted with the will, and thus would not be. None knows what the will wills until what has willed takes place, except one receives a spiritual intuition from God, enabling one to perceive the essences of contingent beings in their eternal latency, in which case he may act in accordance with what he sees. This may happen to a very few men in times of isolation from others. He says, 'I know not what he will do with me or you,' thus speaking openly of the veil between God and us. This is intended to convey that the Prophet ﷺ has unseen knowledge of certain things. So, and this is also this difference between what is the commands of God that form the basis of the Sharia or the Torah law within Judaism, and the knowledge and wisdom that was given to al-Qidr alayhi salam. Thus we know the story when Moses and Qidr met. Moses couldn't understand what Qidr was doing, but he'd also been told by Allah that Qidr alayhi salam had a knowledge that was given to him from Allah. So Qidr was acting upon knowledge, and Moses was acting upon knowledge. But Moses couldn't understand what Qidr was doing, because the knowledge which was given to Moses and the knowledge which was given to Qidr were from different oceans of knowledge, both from Allah, but different. It's like two different fields of knowledge. The biologist wouldn't understand necessarily what the computer engineer was doing. Doesn't mean that either of them are wrong, it's just they're in different fields of knowledge. And in a similar way with religion, you have got these two oceans of knowledge, both from Allah. One of them is exoteric, one of them is concerning the way you set up the systems within your society. that you establish the rule of law, that you establish good governance, that you establish also within your own life a certain code of how you're going to conduct yourself and live your life. This comes from the Sharia and jurisprudence. This is also what was given to Moses, peace be upon him, which we see in the Torah. And we see the comparison with that, with things that are in the Quran that form the basis of Sharia within Islam. But also you've got this other ocean of knowledge, which is the spiritual knowledge. This forms the basis of what became Sufism or the Afani tradition, Tasawwuf in Arabic. This is the spiritual, this is the inner knowledge. This is the knowledge of the way things work. This is insights into the will of God. It's another area of knowledge. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was given both. He was given both a Sharia and he was given a spiritual, esoteric knowledge as well. Wisdom, as we might call it. And there's a balance. In the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's teachings there is a good balance. And upon the Prophet's companions, some of them had more of one or more of the other. And this is why within Islam sometimes there is a rift between the ulama and the awliya. Sometimes it happens. And there are other ulama and awliya who are both scholars and saints at the same time. They understand both. But not every alim is like that. And not every wali or dervish has a deep understanding of Sharia and jurisprudence. Because these are two areas of knowledge. The ideal is to have a balance between the two. And if you follow the path of jurisprudence and you don't have at least some practice or connection with spirituality, it can actually become a very dangerous thing and harmful. It can make the person corrupt. If they're not practicing the purification of the heart while at the same time studying the book knowledge and the rules that society should be governed by, and the jurisprudential knowledge, what we call fiqh, they can become corrupt. And conversely, if a person just follows Sufism or the Afani tradition, the spiritual aspect of Islam, and pays no heed to the jurisprudence, they can lose their way too. Because there's nothing sort of grounding them. The best way is to have a balance between these two. And at least, whichever one you specialize in, at least have some reasonably good understanding of the other field. I mean, at least to a basic level, because it'll help to ground you. So I think we've covered that chapter in this book. And this book, again, Bezels of Wisdom by Ibn Arabi. I highly recommend it if anybody wants to read it. It's interesting. This book is not only studied by Muslims either. A lot of Westerners who are not Muslims like to study this book because it is deep, and from their perspective represents a very high and developed philosophy, and they find it helpful. So it's a shame actually that some of our Muslim brothers and sisters today don't study these books more, when there are people who are outside of our faith tradition who are studying it as philosophy, when this is part of our heritage. But alhamdulillah, they're studying it as well. So I would like to wish you all a very lovely weekend, and I hope you have have a lovely evening and enjoy the rest of the day. But have a lovely weekend, and I will be back for Friday Reflections next Friday, and before that, on Thursday, I will be doing the zikr at 6 o'clock for anybody who would like to join me, and that is began with a sobeh. So I look forward to seeing you all next week, and may Allah bless you all and grant barakah and divine support for your families, for you and your families, grant you forgiveness for any mistakes you have made in your lives, and grant you His divine guidance and support and barakah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammadin wa barak wa salim. Sayyid Rabbi wa salim ala jami anbiya'i wa mursalin wa linkurin ajma'in walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.